Okay, so just hold.
Can you hear? That's perfect.
Okay.
I can hear you both.
Okay.
Okay, good. So I'm going to introduce the show and then introduce you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
The amazing new Westport Library and iTunes proudly presents Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast with me, Trace Burroughs.
And me, Miggs Burroughs.
And today, Miggs and I are extremely excited to have Shel Talmy as a guest today. He's a legendary record producer who created the raw guitar and drum sound that was a signature sound of early British rock, put the Who and the Kinks and the Easy Beats on the map. His influences are still heard today. He's influenced rock for over 50 years. When I was in middle school and high school, in my bands, we played a lot of the hits that he produced. We were one of the first people in the area to have My Generation album, and it blew our minds. And so thank you for being on the show, Shel.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks for all the kind words. Very nice to hear them.
Do you have a question there?
Well, my fanboy thing is, I went to England in 1966 to explore the rock scene. I got arrested. So I was in prison for a month in outside of London. I came my first night out. I had some sleazy apartment in Westbourne Park. I'm walking the streets, and I hear Friday on My Mind coming out of a window of somebody's apartment, and it lifted my spirit. I was so down. I was so depressed. And the first song I heard after a month in prison was Friday on My Mind. And it's been my favorite song ever since for that and many other reasons. But so I want to thank you for that.
What did you do that put you in the slammer for a month?
Yeah, well, essentially it was, I guess, the equivalent of vagrancy. It wasn't drugs, but I was sleeping in a house. I had no room, and I had no place to stay, and I was sleeping in a house, and it turned out to be an abandoned mansion owned by Queen Elizabeth. So I had basically trespassed on Crown property, and that's how that happened.
I guess you got to check out where you sleep in that case, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had no money, and anyway, that's another whole story. But yeah.
Shel, do you want to tell? It's a really fascinating story about how you got in there to produce those first singles by the Who and Kinks and others, like when you met the executive from Decca Records. You want to tell how that all went down and your background before that?
You want to know when I got to London, what I then did, in other words, right?
Yes. And
Okay, starting back from, I was a recording engineer in Los Angeles, and the studio was owned by an English guy my friend Phil, who told me how great England was. And I thought, as I was in my very early 20s, that I should really see something of Europe and England, and particularly before life passed me by. So I said, cool, I'm going away for 5 weeks, and I will go do that, and I'll be back. And I took the precaution of actually talking to people in LA to see who they knew in London. And my friend Nick Benet, who was at Capitol Records, he was the Capitol Records A&R guy, said, because I said I'd like to work a couple of weeks if I could, just because I didn't have a lot of bread. And I didn't really want to sleep somewhere that the Queen owned. So he said, I've just finished a couple of some demos here. Take them and say, could you produce them? I said, okay, cool. And as I got to London, and it was pretty much everything that I thought it was going to be, maybe even more, because it was relaxed. It was a very comfortable place to be. I also got a good contact there by one of my LA friends, and he set up an appointment for me with Dick Grove, who was head of A&R at Decca. And I went into Decca, and being generally at that point in the early 20s, fairly brash, but even being particularly brash because I didn't care, because I was going back in 5 weeks. I said, here I am. I am allegedly the best record producer you're ever going to find out of America, because that's what I do. And here's what I just did. And I gave them the 2 acetates that my friend Nick gave me, which happened to be Lou Rawls and the Beach Boys. Yeah. And Nick, Dick Rose said, great, you start today. So And by the time they found out it was all bullshit, I already had a major hit or two. So they were gentlemanly enough never to mention it, and I kind of stayed on for the next 17 years. So that's in a nutshell.
So so brash. Yeah, I guess you're known for being very brash. And where did you, the sound, that very distinctive, gritty guitar sound, was that something you always heard in your head that nobody else had achieved, or?
Well, it's not only just what I heard in my head; it's what I worked on perfecting back in L.A. I spent a lot of time working on how to get the best sound out of the guitar, how to get the best sound out of drums, which included the fact that I started using 12 mics on drums, which nobody in LA was doing, and certainly nobody in England was doing. And I brought all that with me. I mean, not necessarily intentionally. That's what I've been working on, because I was always trying to improve the sound of what we were trying to do. And so when I got there, that's the way I recorded. And I mean, it's just a little aside here. In the first couple of sessions, when I was miking up the drums, which I did myself with a dozen mics, I said, "You can't do that because it's going to phase." And I said, "Like, you just have to listen and see if it does or not," which of course it didn't. Like 2 months later, I was using a dozen mics. So that's how all that came about. And your next question is, how did I meet the Who?
Yes, thank you.
The Who I met because by that time I had a small office in the Soho district of the West End in London, which is where a lot of the record people were. And a lady that was working for me part-time was friendly with the two new managers of the Who were previously the High Numbers. And she said, they would like me to come, and could I listen to the band? I said, yeah, okay, fine, because I was, of course, in that kind of situation where I was looking for people to record, and good people, and I went, and they were recording in a church hall. It was nice and echoey, and that's kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever done a rehearsal in a church hall, but what the hell?
Yeah.
And they started playing, I think, literally about 8 or 9 bars into it. I said, yeah, I will sign them. And they were the best rock band I'd heard since I got to England. And in fact, Talmy started singing "I'm a Man," which and yeah, I could definitely work with these guys. So that's how it all came about.
So you also produced for the Kinks, "You Really Got Me" and "All the Day and All the Night."
I did.
So there's this story that follows that those singles around. You probably heard it a million times.
Same thing before the Who. There's a street in England or in London, which you may know, called Denmark Street.
Yeah.
At that time, it's a very small street. It was actually loaded with publishers. That's all. There were publishers and a couple of instrument stores. I was visiting my friends at one of the publishers one day and waiting for them to we were all going to lunch. And Robert Weiss, who was one of the Kinks managers, and they were formerly the Ravens, by the way, walked in with a demo, and he said, anybody who would like to listen to this demo? And I was standing up in front with nobody else, and I said, yeah, I'm here, I'll listen to it. So I did. I loved what I heard. And I met with the band, and we got on extremely well, and I then took them into Pi and got them a deal. And that's how we wound up with I wound up with the Kinks, and how we wound up at Pi.
Is it true that Ray Davies or one of them always says that they got the sound on one of those singles because it was a ripped speaker and they let it go and they gave it a special gritty sound? Is that a true story?
But that's not right. That's Dave. Dave was always will be the guitarist. Jimmy Page did not play the lead solo, which I've been asked probably about 5,000 times.
Right.
And he had a small pig nose speaker that we used to because we were trying for something gritty. And we used to kick every now and then, and he used a razor blade on it and like that. And that was, in fact, 22 and AC30 amp. So we got best of both worlds with that.
Well, I have a quick, why, I mean, this is repeated all the time. It's just, it comes with the story that Ray and Dave fighting constantly, but they never say what they were fighting about. Was it over music? Was it over personalities? Was it just brotherly jealousy? I mean, what were they fighting about?
I think the latter is probably closer to a brotherly jealousy.
Yeah.
I honestly did not want to get into why they were fighting when they started. That I'd call for a 15-minute coffee break for the rest of us and let them go to it. We'd come back and hopefully there wouldn't be any blood on the floor.
Right.
And you're recording. So, but when that worked out fine, yeah. I honestly, I don't know what the hell they're fighting about.
It was just constant bickering. I'm just curious if you were there when in 1966, also after that, I started going to clubs and I saw The Who at Tiles. There was a nightclub called Tiles on Oxford Street. Does that sound familiar? Anyway, that's the first time I saw The Who in 1966 in this club called Tiles.
Spell the name of the club because I'm not understanding.
Tiles. Like
okay,
Moses.
no, yeah, I know it. I was never there.
Okay. Anyways, I would just never probably the most
Our radar screen.
Yeah, that's what I know. It's probably the most monumental performance I ever saw on a stage. I mean, it was in this crowded little club, and it was in 1966, and of course, they were wearing the Union jacket. Pete was wearing the Union jacket, and anyway, it was amazing. So
I remember you came back, and I was still in high school. I was drumming. Back then, my style of drumming was like, Charlie Watts style. You told me that some girl threw her bra at The Who, and you talked about Keith Moon, and after that, I was like a Keith Moon fanatic, and I held my drumming after him for the next 30 years.
In my opinion, and I've said it many times, was the absolute best rock cover of all time.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell people too.
I have a video of them on YouTube. I took the video at the Fillmore East playing Can't Explain. And I got the real close-ups because I was really close and in the theater, but phenomenal drumming. I mean, you can see, I sort of zeroed in on him, and you can just see the intensity in his face.
Okay, I'll give you my short story about which I've related before, but I'll tell you again with Keith. And Keith, as you know, was a wild man when he was coming, and here I had just mic'd everything up with my dozen mics, and I said, Keith, I want you to do me a favor. These mics are really expensive. I don't care how close you get. Don't fucking hit them. So, no problem. And he got about maybe a millimeter close, but he never hit a mic. So that's one of my better stories about Keith and why he was such a brilliant drummer.
Right. Yeah, precise. Why didn't the Easy Beats? I mean, you gave, you were responsible for their hit. They had been in Australia and they had some success there, but the Friday on My Mind really put them on the map. And then what happened after that? I just, what do you think? Why do bands like that fall apart when they got everything going for them?
This is really probably a longer story than you got time for. I'll try to give you a short version. They came to England after some success in Australia. They had a manager named Ted Albert,
right,
who was the son of the leading publishing company in Australia. So, thanks, Dad. He started his own little production company. And when they came to England, they were initially signed up with United Artists. I think I'm correct in saying, and he produced such a lousy couple of tracks they fired him. So when that's Ted Albert I'm talking about. So then the manager, who was actually really the manager, the guy named Mike Vaughn, started seeking out other people, and they came to me that was the way I'd be interested. So I listened. I said, yeah, I was really interested. I liked the band a lot, but I didn't like the songs they were doing. And so I asked them to go away and write stuff and come in up to my office, once a week and play me what you've written. And, we eventually, hopefully, will come up with a great song. This went on for about 5 or 6 weeks until they came up. And I played Friday Night Mine, and literally about 4 bars, and I said, yeah, that's it. We're going to do it. And I got studio time, and we, in about the next week or so, we went and did it. And it took, I think, maybe about 3 or 4 takes because it was that good. By the way, I always rehearse the bands before I go in, so this is not like
right.
We're going to start from scratch and what do we do now, guys? I always walk in knowing hopefully about 90% of what I'd like to hear, and leaving on 10% for something that wonderful might happen on the session. So
right.
Anyway, that's the story of Friday in my mind, and it became an international hit.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But again, why not? Did the band just, again, personalities? They just couldn't hold it together. I mean, they're on their way to huge, bigger successes.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't ask the second part of that question, did I? For openers, Ted Albert chose, after I had a signed contract, not to honor it. And so therefore, after I did an album's worth of stuff, I did no more. And they were unhappy with what they were doing. A couple of them stayed on in England for another couple of years, and they eventually went back to, with no success, by the way. They had another hit. And they went back to Australia, and of course, they then started AC/DC, which were a couple of their brothers and things like that.
Oh, so, I didn't know that.
That is the best I can tell you. I'm assuming is that because they stayed on and they had little to no success, that they decided to say, finally say, hell with it, let's go back to Australia, where they were certainly superstars. And by the way, that Friday in My Mind was voted as the greatest Australian record of all time.
Oh.
Yeah, well, it's on my. I run. I go out and run on the streets, and I have it on my. I listen to it every time I run. It's in my little playlist, and I still love it. I've listened to it hundreds of times.
It's something like, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that what happened, because I would love to have continued producing them, because we would have come up with more stuff. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. So there you go.
Do you ever stay in touch with them? I mean, I just saw a documentary, and at first I saw early videos, and that the lead singer Stevie Wright is like just dynamo jumping all over the stage in this documentary that was recorded about 5 years ago. I mean, he's gained a lot of unrecognizable. I mean, his voice is shot. He's overweight. Are you ever in touch with any of those?
No longer with us, right? You know that, right? He's dead. Died several years ago.
Okay.
Overdose, something like that. I don't know. Whatever.
Okay. Well.
So, is there anything? I know I saw one of these things in a bio that you suggested. You tried to get Decca interested in Manfred Mann and Georgie Fame, and they reclined, but they were like huge in England. So someone finally figured out that they were talents.
It was apparent from the get-go that I was an independent producer, because everybody, when I got to England at that time, all the A&R producer guys were on a salary. They're making not a whole lot of money. And I said, again, because I was, as far as I was concerned, I was going back in 5 weeks. I didn't care. I said, I'm an independent producer, meaning I get royalties and like that, and I'm not actually working for you. You can pay me a weekly stipend, which I accept, but I'm not really an employee of Decca. So as part of what I wanted to do, of course, was bring in other bands, and I brought in both Georgie Fame and Manfred, and they turned the boat down, and that's when I resorted to being an independent producer, and why the next thing I did was take the Inks to July.
So what kind of projects are you still producing?
Well, I haven't. I restarted it a few months ago. I did not. Let's see if I can back up here. The music business got, if that's a good word. It went to directions that didn't thrill me because I happen to like music, and for several years there was not a whole lot of what I considered music in the music business. And recently, and I'm crediting actually Billie Eilish's brother for making the really good modern records, but also doing music, and this being a nice copycat industry. Everybody's very copying her. So copyrighted music is back in the charts, and that got me interested again. So that's what I've been doing. On top of which, that I also have been very active in licensing material. But some of my tracks, in other words, currently, my Chad and Jeremy track of Summer Song was used for Coors Light beer, and my creation track of Making Time was used by Audi, and another creation track is in the new Rambo film. So I've been doing some of that also with a company that specializes in licensing material for whatever film, TV, video games, etc. And that plus the fact that the business, I think, finally turned where there's music back in the charts, got me back in the studio. And that's really what I've been up to doing in the last few months.
Right.
You also write, don't you? Have you written? I know you read a book. What do we do now, Butch? And was that a screenplay or a book?
It's a book. A book I wrote called "What Do You Now, Butch?" What do we do now, Butch? I should say. And it was taken from the point of view of them allegedly dying in a shootout in Venezuela. I think was it. Well, whatever, one of those South countries, and so I took the book from it that they actually picked, and went back to England and got into a big paper, and the book came out, and it was optioned 4 separate times to be a film. It's never been made into a film. I should have made a hell of a lot of money out of the option.
That's wild. But you claim that they never died in Bolivia, right? That's your theory, or do you have evidence?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't think they did. I researched it as much as I could, as much as was available. I don't think they did die. And there's been many stories about Bush in particular having come back to America and calling himself another name, and lots of people think that he actually was Bush. Including his sister, who claimed that she came and visited him a couple of 3 different times. So, there's no way to prove it one or the other at this stage of the game. But I thought it'd make a good book, and it was fun to write.
Wow. So, are you currently working on any other writing projects? I mean, or just?
Well, currently, what I'm doing, since I decided to be back in the studio, I recently opened a Facebook account and an Instagram account, and I've been posting vignettes about the bands I've worked with and some rock history and that kind of thing. And check it out. It's on Facebook. All the Instagram is, of course, is mainly photos and stuff like that. So the longer the stories, which longer than Instagram goes for, are all on Facebook.
Is it under your name? If we just
under my name, and no, they're apparently going very well. I've been getting tons and tons of followers, surprised the hell out of me. How many people appear to be interested. So, check it out. You might like it.
We will. Well, this podcast goes out on iTunes, so hopefully you'll get even another more of an audience. Now, I read somewhere, this is something delicate, but that you lost your sight when you were younger. Is that true?
I have an inherited eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa, which takes decades to get to the point where I can no longer see. I'm at that point now, but for decades that was not the case. And they're doing a lot of research on it, and I believe that at some point it's going to be stem cells that are probably going to cure it, but so far that hasn't happened, and I'd like to think that I'll still be around when they do find something, but it's not, then not. I'll cope with it the way I have to cope with it.
And we thank you we want to thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us, Shel. It's really, as you can tell, we're both huge British rock fans, Who fans, and Kinks and Easy Beats especially. It's just great because you encompassed all that. You're responsible for all that, and made our lives, gave me a lot of joy. Anyway.
Yeah, same. Still feeding off of those hits today. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I said I appreciate very kind words, and it was fun doing it, and it certainly kept me off the streets. So.
Okay, well.
And I'm having a good time again being back in the studio.
No, that's terrific. Well, we're not supposed to be out on the streets anyway, so it's a good place.
That's right. That's for sure. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.